In 1931, in Dallas, Texas, an 8-year-old boy, the son of Russian Jewish immigrants, psychosomatically lost the use of his legs and was confined to bed for a year, a result of trauma from constant anti-Semitic bullying from his classmates. He would make a full recovery and would go on to serve as a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. Later, he would spend time as a cheerleader at Southern Methodist University in University Park, Texas, graduating in 1949. He would then make his way to California to pursue a career in show business. Starting in 1953, he began accumulating small acting roles in movies like Vicky, Black Widow, and Target Zero, and TV shows like Dragnet, I Love Lucy, Gunsmoke, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He was working with a number of movie and TV icons, but it's a safe bet none of them realized they were working with a future legend themselves. In fact, many of them probably didn't even bother to learn or remember his name, a name that would soon be emblazoned on almost every hit TV show you could think of, when the credits would show executive producer Aaron Spelling. With a growing interest in the behind-the-scenes element of TV production and less interest in acting, Spelling sold his first script, titled $20 Bride, to the Jane Wyman Show in 1956. He was hired as a scriptwriter and producer for the Western anthology series Zane Grey Theater, which ran from 56 till 61. In 1963, he became a producer on the detective series Burke's Law, where he pioneered a multiple guest star per episode format that would later be seen as one of his great TV innovations. Now off and running, Spelling started his own production company in 1965, Aaron Spelling Productions. The name would evolve over time, later being known as Spelling Entertainment Incorporated and eventually Spelling Television Incorporated. No matter the name or the era, though, Spelling's company, and the man himself, remained extremely prolific, and Spelling became known as the sort of highly coveted hitmaker that everyone in TV wants to be in business with. Spelling would create, co-create, and/or produce a number of the most successful series in TV history, including Charlie's Angels, The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Dynasty, Heart to Heart, Melrose Place, and Beverly Hills 90210, in which Spelling would also cast his aspiring actress daughter, Tori Spelling. Of course, when a man is as prolific as Spelling, it goes without saying they won't all be hits. By the time of his death in 2006, at age 83, he had amassed 218 different TV producer and executive producer credits, and certainly a good number of those were for quickly canceled and forgotten by time shows. But his hits were giant hits, and his enormous impact on TV and pop culture in general allowed him great financial success. When he died, he had a net worth of $600 million, and his famous LA home, dubbed the Manor, was a sprawling 56,500 square foot estate, one of the largest private residences in the city. Spelling was known for extravagant gift-giving, and he and his second wife Candy were publicly celebrated for their philanthropic work with organizations like the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. For a man of his success and stature in the entertainment business, it's actually somewhat surprising how largely free of public scandal his career was for most of his lifetime, though ultimately this would change. 2 years before his death, Spelling was accused of sexual harassment by Charlene Richards, a live-in nurse who had been hired to take care of the now homebound Spelling as he battled Alzheimer's disease and other health problems. Richards also claimed, in a lawsuit brought against him, that Spelling bragged about past sexual relations with actresses who had sought roles in his work. Spelling and his family vehemently denied the allegations, and after Richards' legal team sent a survey to 600 actresses asking about their experiences with Spelling, his estate countersued Richards for defamation. The defamation charge was ultimately dismissed by the courts, but any results of the sent-out survey were never made public. Whatever the truth may be about Spelling's behind-the-scenes behavior, there's no denying the gigantic impact he had on the TV industry, and in a way, the movie industry as well. After all, when you've made as many hit shows as Spelling did, it's only natural to expect some of them will make their way to the big screen also. And sure enough, a number of Spelling's iconic shows were eventually graced with movie adaptations, including Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, SWAT, Starsky and Hutch, and one of his first big TV successes, a 5-season hit show about a unique group of delinquent youths turned undercover cops. The year is 1999, and MGM are ready to release the big screen version of a classic TV police series, and in the process hopefully kick off Hollywood's next big action franchise with The Mod Squad.
0.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris. And we kids are what? Some kind of pod squad or something?
Nice, Daddy-O. Solid. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to try to keep it up the whole time. Don't worry.
Right.
Don't worry.
Okay,
my brain would explode.
Mm-hmm.
But we are. I know. If we seem a little giddy, it's because we're 2 weeks in now, or 2 weeks, 2 episodes in. To can you call it a new theme when we're already in the second episode? Sure, let's do it because this one lasts a while.
Yeah.
Our most recent theme, Summer Sweeps. Our continued look at movies based on old TV shows. This is like a really big trend for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Before comic books and video games became the IP to plunder, all the movie studios were like, all these boomers watch these shows and they got disposable income now. Let's just make these movies now. And sometimes it worked, as we talked about, and oftentimes it did not. And enough that at least we have 6 episodes to talk about again after doing previous ones and more to come.
Yes.
But for this episode, we are looking at 1999's The Mod Squad. Not the most remembered show today, I'd say, for younger generations, but a show that nonetheless was popular enough in its day to get a movie adaptation in 1999. And Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about that 1999 version?
For sure. It is directed by Scott Silver, who's primarily a writer who has had a big success, actually. He wrote 8 Mile, The Fighter, Joker, and the upcoming Joker 2.
Joker, Folie à Deux.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, great French.
Folie à Deux. Joker, Folie à Deux. Is that better?
That's actually, you know what? That was pretty solid.
Pretty good, right?
Solid.
Yeah.
Pretty good. It's written by Scott Silver, Kate Lanier, and Stephen Kay, who is a prestige TV guy. He produces and writes on Yellowstone. This is based on the 60s/70s series created by Bud Ruskin, who was a former LAPD cop, who based the show The Mod Squad around his experiences with working with a special youth squad in the 50s. Mm-hmm. This movie, Trev, in 1999 numbers.
I know.
This is crazy.
This is crazy, yeah. Especially once you've watched the movie.
Yeah. The budget of this movie is $50 million. That in 2024 numbers is almost $100 million. Insanity. And worldwide, Trev, it made less than 15 million. So this was a horrific bomb. Sometimes we talk about some successes on the financial side or the critical side. This one was a bomb on both accounts. So yeah, that is a big reason why we're talking about it.
And honestly, this is one, and this isn't not getting into my feelings on the movie, but this is one where if anybody at any point in this process had just stopped and thought about it for a second, any smart person could have told them this is what was going to happen. Yeah. Like I wish I could, I remember being 18, 19 around the time this was coming out and just knowing this was going to fail. And it's like, if they had just called 18-year-old me and said, hey, you like movies, what do you think? I'd be like, no, don't do that. Don't make a $50 million movie out of a show that, only the older generation remembers, but you're making the movie for the younger generation. That doesn't remember that show or have any kind of relation to it. Bad idea. We talked last time about how with the Avengers and how that was very popular in certain parts of the world only. It's just like, certain shows hold on more in in the ether than others. And so you get sometimes why, oh yeah, that's got enough of a name appeal. And I'm not taking anything away from the show Mod Squad, which we're going to talk about in a second, was actually, in doing our research, I think both of us were probably surprised to find it was much more popular than I thought it was. But still, it's not like it held on enough to justify this movie, I think. So there's just a little spoiler alert. That's a big part of why it failed. Whether or not, we'll talk later about the quality of the movie.
Yeah. Well, I posed the question to you last time with the Avengers being like, do you know a single soul who knows what the Mod Squad is or talks about it in such high regard? And I think those people were, they're not the target audience of the movie. Which is it's just the most bizarre thing in the world.
Yeah, that's the big miscalculation here.
Yeah, because this TV show ran on ABC from September 1968 to March 1973, so 5 seasons, a total of 123 episodes. Hour-long episodes.
Syndication money, baby.
100%. For people that don't know what that means, when you cross 100 episodes, the money comes flying into your bank account.
Yeah. That used to be the case, right? We're talking about old TV models here.
Yes,
but it used to be
of course.
the case that in the old TV model, if you could get to 100 episodes, that's when you could be sold as a syndication package. So, like other networks could buy the syndication rights and start running repeats of your shows forever. And that's why, a lot of these older shows were still a thing when I was a kid. I talked about this a little bit last time, especially, in the 70s going into the 80s and even early 90s. There wasn't as much new content vying for people's attention, and a lot of networks that, especially local networks, that just had airtime to kill, and advertisers wanting to put their commercials on something, they would buy up these syndication rights to old shows. And when I was a kid in the 80s, there were still plenty of shows from the 60s and the 70s on TV all the time. In a way that this is something you and I have talked about privately, and I think we talked about a little bit last time. I don't think the younger kids today, to be like an old man for a second, watch as many old shows just because they're not constantly still having them put in front of their face like I was. As a kid, I was getting both the new shows and during the day reruns of all the old stuff too. So I did have a little bit of a slight knowledge of at least the name Mod Squad when I was a kid. But this comes to what we're speaking of is even there. It's not like in the 80s it felt like it was holding on as much as other shows. I was very familiar with even other Aaron Spelling shows like Charlie's Angels and Fantasy Island and The Love Boat. Those had held on more. The Mod Squad, honestly, I just kind of knew the name, and I don't think it was until really we started talking about doing this movie finally that I even kind of looked into what was the story of it. The only thing I found, and this has to be from some kind of pop culture osmosis or being used in quick scenes in other movies, maybe parodies or something, is once, I started doing the research and I looked a little bit into the show and watching the videos, I was like, oh, I know this theme song. The theme song is definitely very iconic, but I don't know where I knew the theme song from because I've certainly never seen an episode of the show until recently. Spoiler alert.
I had mentioned in a recent episode about an old Canadian retro TV channel, called Deja Vu. And I would catch, All in the Family, Bewitched, Three's Company. I used to watch them usually before elementary school, actually. And I used to love those shows. But nowadays, it's hard enough to get a 70s movie, on Netflix or something like that. So it's always on to the next. What's the new thing? What's the new Digidome fucking Kevin Hart movie, starring The Rock? And no wonder, even to this day, in 2024, I'm almost certain most of our listeners are going to be like, what the hell is this movie, right? And what the hell is this TV show?
And I think the other reason for that is, as we start to talk about the show, as what we've learned of it now, is that as successful as it might have been at the time, its very concept makes it an instantly dated show.
Definitely.
It's like a show that aged itself out almost immediately. It was a show that was made to be kind of experienced in the moment. And it's very tied to the times and the cultural movement of that specific era.
Undercover, out of sight.
A year ago, I wouldn't give 2 pop bottles for a cop. Now look at us.
The Mod Squad.
Idiot maid locked me in a closet.
Well, at least you had a maid.
Hey, at least you had a closet.
Link.
Bad trip, man.
Hey, look out! From all the transitions of prayers to pills to booze to acid to junk and back again, I still can't remember the words.
Cops. 1 white, 1 black, 1 blonde. The Mod Squad.
And I don't think anybody, looking to buy syndication packages later in the, later 70s into the 80s was like, oh yeah, people today would still really respond to the Mod Squad the same way they would to stuff like Love Boat, which is just, get funny people on a boat. That's easy.
I think that's a great segue into what the show is about. It revolves around 3 youths, Peter Cochran, Lincoln Hayes, and Julie Barnes, all kind of delinquents in some way, shape, or form, stolen a car, or got mixed up with drugs, or was found, rioting. And a captain of the police force, Adam Greer, takes these 3 youths under his umbrella and says, "Hey, instead of going to jail, how about you become my my little undercover task force, because they can get into places that regular police can't. That was a big tagline of the show. This was a show again in the late 60s, early 70s, so they were hip. They were kind of represented the culture's fears regarding youth. You know, they were long-haired rebels. Again, like I said, they broke probation. They were involved in riots, and the show was acclaimed for being socially relevant. So I think nowadays there's a lot of socially relevant horror films. I think that's become kind of a subgenre in recent years, speaking to today's time, right? And I think the Mod Squad did the exact same thing back then. Because let me list a couple of these ideas. You know, the anti-war movement, illegal immigration, student protest, soldiers returning from Vietnam, child abuse, abortion, drug trades. A lot of stuff that, yes, is relevant today in a lot of ways, but I think the late 60s, early 70s, I mean, it was a hippy-dippy world. You know what I mean? People had a lot of causes, and I think that this show really allowed another window into that world, right? From a youth perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of youth perspective shows, just as I alluded to earlier, and I'll talk more about it later, I did end up watching the pilot of the show to get some familiarity with, what the show is like in comparison to the movie. And I'll say, even in just watching one episode, and I'm sure this is probably the case across like the run of it, that you watch a lot of shows that are like targeted towards the youths, right? And then you go like, oh, but this is clearly like 50-year-old men writing it, and that's like a little obvious still. But that said, I will say I don't think the show was one that felt like it was overly speaking down to like the youth audience, and it was really trying to present the heroes as part of the current youth culture and really deal with these ideas in a way that felt honest to the audience. So I think that's probably a big reason why I think this actually was a very, very popular show with young people, because they did feel like they were kind of represented by these characters and by the topics it was tackling. Like another issue it dealt with that you didn't mention is police brutality, which is something that like not a lot of police shows at the time would have dared touch on because they only presented the police as good guys, right? And this one's saying like, well, no, the Mod Squad are good, but they might have to deal with like crooked cops, Totally. And people were probably like, oh my God, finally we're being shown stuff on TV that we're not seeing. And as you said, starting 68, this is a time where, that's one of the most vibrant, but also just like, chaotic times in American history is the 60s, and that youth movement and what they were facing with like the Vietnam War and, the going into like, as you said, the hippie movement and the drugs and sexual revolution, and then the darkness of the late 60s with the Manson murders, and even like the beginning of the decade being marred by the assassinations of Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, just a crazy, crazy decade. And so there was all these like youthful people who were like really trying to rebel against, their boomer parents and the families, the parents coming out of the World War II generation. And that was like kind of even the title, right? The Mod Squad, that's what it's referring to, the mod culture. Now it's kind of weird because, the mod culture, even in my mind, when I think of the mod culture today, it's so much more to me heavily associated with like British youth culture than American. I think the easiest way to explain what mod culture would be to younger viewers today is go watch the first like 5 minutes of Austin Powers 2, or that's probably, is that the one that starts with him back in the 60s and shows like the whole, or is that the first one that does like the whole musical sequence?
The first one does the musical sequence, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, watch that, right? Or just like Austin Powers as a character.
The second one, it starts off with Vanessa as a fembot.
Oh,
spoilers.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah, spoilers. But just Austin Powers as a character, right, is kind of like what I think was the mod generation. Because like the mod like culture, as was known, was a subculture that began in London in the 50s and kind of continued through the 60s. I would say it was kind of somewhat probably already dying out by the 70s. I think there was like a revival in the late 70s maybe. But these were like young kids, and typically, honestly, they were young, affluent kids, right? They were living off of the fact that coming out of World War II, there was a big like, kind of financial boom in some of these countries, and suddenly these kids were all coming from like wealthy families that were living off the new wealth of like the new jobs that opened up after that. And the way they rebelled then was to kind of like, it's the typical youthful rebellion of we're going to do the opposite stuff as our parents, but that meant that they were taking their parents' money and going off and buying like really stylish clothes. The mods were always known for wearing the hippest, newest trends in fashion, and then getting into like modern jazz and kind of soul and rhythm music. And ultimately, the other thing I know about the mods is that, well, obviously the drug use, LSD was becoming a big thing for the youth culture at the time. But also, I also know that like the mods in the 60s in the UK were always fighting with the rockers. That was the big clash. I've watched movies about this. The mods and the rockers. The rockers were the kids who wore the leather jackets and did the greaser hair and were into more rock and roll music. And the mods were into more psychedelic jazz music and wore really fancy clothes. So it's strange that they called this show the Mod Squad, because I think it was just, again, that's maybe an element of like the older writers being like, wow,
Totally.
but kids, they're the mods, they're mods, and it's like, maybe that's not the right, or maybe Hippie Squad didn't test well, because I think that was kind of more in line with what the show is actually going for.
Totally. It was also pretty acclaimed for having all three characters on equal footing. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the characters is African American, Lincoln, I guess, Link for short. But all three, they're friends in the show. They also even have, I think Lincoln and Julie Barnes share a kiss, which was very new territory back in the day. Yes, it had happened a few times in like the Cosby Show and Star Trek and Mission Impossible.
Yeah, let's not take away Star Trek's credit here.
I'm blowing by this.
First interracial kiss on TV, just okay.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, now I look like an asshole. For newer listeners, Trev likes to bring up Star Trek as much as possible. Wherever he can get his like grubby little Star Trek hands into it, he will. And meaning I have to put music from the show in.
Hey,
that's the trade-off. I've been told.
It's an important moment in TV history. If you want to just act like it means nothing, that's fine. But I'm just saying.
No, for sure. It was one of the biggest moments in history.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about this show, when they did it, Aaron Spelling, the producer, had to really fight for it. Even after all these years, I think this happened like 10 years after the Star Trek kiss, which is, crazy that he still had to fight for it. He was threatened by the studio. ABC said, yeah, okay, fine, we'll do it, but you're going to get so much hate mail and complaints, like I promise you. And Aaron Spelling was on record as saying he didn't get a single letter ever about it.
Yeah.
So,
as
of
is
course,
usually the case with that kind of stuff, yeah.
100%. It also had a ton of guest stars in the show, just to name a few. Have you heard of these ones, Trev? Leslie Nielsen, Ed Asner, Vincent Price, Sammy Davis Jr., Richard Pryor, Richard Dreyfuss, Sam Elliott, Cesar Romero, Harrison Ford, Clint Howard, just from Evil Speak, which we just covered, Louis Gossett Jr. as well, who was in Punisher, right?
Mm-hmm. The late great Louis Gossett Jr. Yeah.
And Billy D. Williams. Like, these are huge names that were on this show. So, just insane to especially when I never heard of the show before.
Yeah, kind of that's kind of an Aaron Spelling like trademark, right? Just load up your show with guest stars, and this was like one of his early successes. Yeah, it's funny because when you look into like the history of the show and the things we're talking about, it's on some levels the show is definitely trying to be very progressive. And then on other levels, you could see like still the regressive nature of TV at the time. You're talking about it being, like of a certain era. And that's even felt in when you watch the old promos for it. And they like refer to the Mod Squad as
One white, one black, one blonde.
And as I said, even like when you watch the show, or as I did, I watched the pilot, Peggy Lipton looks younger, but like, I don't know the age. I think I looked it up. I think I looked up Michael Cole because he, to me, they were all supposed to be, I think, 18, 19
yes,
in the
and
show.
I have the numbers here. When the series premiered, Williams was 29, Cole was 23, and Lipton was 22.
Oh wow! I'll tell you what, Cole looked a lot older than that, even because I thought when I looked it up that he was even older. But yeah. They definitely looked older. So yeah, it's got kind of that like camp appeal to it, where it's like, yeah, these young kids who look like like still parents in the show. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I still think like I get it. I get when you read about it and think about how not a lot of TV shows at the time were tackling the kind of stories you talked about, and had this young, attractive cast. Now, the one thing I'll say is that's kind of like to talk about the cast for just a moment. This like now finding out about the existence of the show and seeing like what a big hit it was for a time, kind of finally answers a question that I've had for a very, very long time in my life. Because, as you know, I'm a huge David Lynch and in particular huge Twin Peaks fan. And obviously, the great Peggy Lipton was on Twin Peaks as Norma. And I've always known, because I've seen it as a shirt, I've seen like people with posters for it, that when Twin Peaks premiered in 1990, one of the first like newspaper ad for it had 2 pictures. One was Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Ontkeen, and then the other was Peggy Lipton. Like those 2 pictures were put next to each other. And if you watch Twin Peaks, I mean, the Norma stuff is fine, I guess, but I wouldn't call her a central character. And I always wondered why was that picture chosen? Why was like Norma so like featured in like the premiere? And I just didn't know at the time. And it took me a long time to learn that she was still, to a certain generation, a very iconic TV star because of Mod Squad. Like she was the one cast member who won a Golden Globe for the show too.
Plus she was hot.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, she's hot in the Mod Squad. She's hot in Twin Peaks. She's pretty hot in Twin Peaks: The Return. That's so yeah, Peggy Lipton. Like my obviously base knowledge of Peggy Lipton has always been Twin Peaks. Clarence Williams III, I was more familiar with primarily because of his great role in the 1995 blaxploitation horror movie Tales from the Hood. He is awesome in that movie, but he's also just one of those guys who kind of popped up in a lot, especially after that, in the wake of that, as that being kind of like a comeback film for him, would pop up quite a bit in like TV and movies, always in smaller roles, but he was like a scene stealer. Of course, featured in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Get your music ready.
You bastard.
And then Michael Cole, I really know nothing about. It seems like he's the one who, after the show, just didn't kind of have the same sort of career. But
the only surviving member of the cast right now.
Yes, unfortunately, the only surviving cast member. Yeah.
Peggy Lipton died pretty young-ish, eh? I forgot that she passed away a couple of years ago. I was a Twin Peaks fan later on in life. Actually, Trev, you got me into Twin Peaks, which is funny. We had met all those years ago and then became friends, long-distance friends, and you had finally turned me on to the show. I think it was in prep for Return. I think you knew Return was coming, so you're like, just if you have any like passing interest, watch the show first. And since then, I watched The Return. I've watched it twice. I own it on that great Blu-ray set that they put out. But yeah, I totally forgot that Peggy Lipton had passed. I mean, a lot of that cast has passed from Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I was just about to say she passed away just 2 years after it aired. But like, it's wild watching The Return now and realizing how lucky Lynch is that he was sizable to make it when he did, because we've lost so much of the cast since then. The great Robert Forster, who we recently talked about, Miguel Ferrer, Tom Sizemore. Yeah, so many people, even in just the few years since the show went off the air,
crazy,
passed away. Yeah.
So on that note, on that drab note, this movie, did you have any sense of this getting off the ground in the late 90s at all, or just totally unaware?
Well, like I said, I alluded to this earlier. I was aware that this movie came out. I mean, look, in 1998, 99, like I graduated high school in 98,
Sure.
So suddenly you have that post-high school freedom where for like starting to go see movies all the time with just your friends and not having to worry about taking your parents along or begging them to take you to see a movie, getting a car, getting to drive around. So yeah, I mean, movies were a big part of my life. So obviously I remember the Mod Squad coming out, this would have been a time, I mean, geez, not much has changed, but back then I was like going to the movies every weekend,
Right.
And I think what I definitely would have been aware of is like, oh, Claire Danes, because she was kind of the hot thing of the moment, right? I mean, My So-Called Life started in 94. It only lasts like 19 episodes, but you have to remember like how big of a deal those 19 episodes were, like how iconic that show was, and what like kind of an instant success it was, and it blows her, and unfortunately it also gave us Jared Leto, but whatever, like that was a big deal. And she like was just like, she came firing right out of the gun with that show. And then of course the 96 Romeo plus Juliet, as I like to call it, the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet movie, which is a gigantic hit, and she's a big part of that. So in that era, it really seemed like she was primed to maybe be like, oh my God, could this be the emergence of a new, Julia Roberts or something? Is on the way to that? So in 99, I think by 99, that was actually starting to slow down a little bit already. I don't think she followed up Romeo and Juliet extremely well over the next couple of years. It's like there's some missteps there with films like U-Turn and, maybe even The Rainmaker. But yeah, 99, I remember seeing the posters with her on them and going, okay, that's the new Claire Danes movie. But that was kind of like and I knew that it was a TV show, because like I said, you knew the title at least at that time. But I had no idea of the concept. Obviously, the trailers didn't grab me because I never saw it. And obviously, when it came out, I probably was aware, as someone, again, back then I was always reading Entertainment Weekly. I was already watching Siskel and Ebert, or, Ebert and Roper, whatever it was at the time. But obviously, I would have been aware that when it came out, everyone seemed to hate it. This was not a movie that was met with critics throwing roses all over the place. This was kind of instantly, targeted as like a gigantic bomb.
It actually has a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Not good. Not good at all. I was thinking maybe you heard through the grapevine that before Claire Danes was cast, they looked at, I mean, I don't know about 3 of our favorites, but 2 for sure. Sarah Michelle Gellar and 1 Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
So that's Trev's like main crush of all time, just for new
Mila
listeners.
Jovovich, yeah.
We did a theme months years ago, which is honestly weird to say years ago. Mila Jovovich, we did. So go listen to those episodes.
I definitely wasn't aware of that because, again, this was like such a different era, right? Where we weren't being constantly inundated with like casting rumors and even like who's in contention before the movie came out.
Right.
And like we are today. And then even if we were, like, let's say the era was similar, again, this was the Mod Squad. nobody was talking about this movie. Nobody was excited for it. That was the thing. Like, this is actually, you asked me what I remember. That's what I remember. I remember it coming out and being like, okay, there's this new movie with Claire Danes and Giovanni Ribisi. Like, you looked at the cast and go, these are like young on the rise stars. But there was just this feeling of like, nobody asked for this. And clearly, like, the ad campaign and all the marketing wasn't doing a good enough job of selling the idea of like, why does this matter now? How is this like relevant to today? And there was just like no excitement for this at any point. So by the time it arrived in theaters, it just felt DOA. It was like, why do I care? This is a show that people only know the name. We don't remember this, and we're not interested in this.
You were never lured in by the Levi's denim commercials?
An interesting part of this movie's legacy, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
we talked. Well, I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Because we talked about like the mod culture is like so fashion based that maybe we're like, oh, geez, if we're going to call our movie the Mod Squad, we have to justify it somehow. Let's make a marketing deal with Levi's.
Bizarre. Before they hired Scott Silver, by the way, they went to Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris, who went on to do Little Miss Sunshine. They had declined to make the movie and focus on music videos.
Probably a good call.
But isn't that interesting? Like that, I think, yeah, like you just nailed it. Probably a good call because these two were just music video directors anyways, right? Now the studio comes to them and offers them, hey, do you want to make this surefire hit from the 60s and 70s? It has a name attached. We'll market the hell out of it. You'll get some free jeans out of it too, I promise. And then we're going to give you $50 million to make it. And these two say no.
Yeah.
I find that is very, very telling.
Yes, that's very telling of like their knowledge of like reading the script probably, and just thinking about like what are the actual like optics on this, like, because this is where, some studio head who is probably 68 years old at the time goes, I love the Mod Squad, it's probably like this is a surefire hit, and like 2 young youthful music video directors, and this is the era when every music video director who had like at least 10 acclaimed music videos was getting snatched up by Hollywood. You know, this is where like that whole generation of filmmakers, your David Finchers, your Spike Jonze, your Michel Gondrys, they were coming from the music video world. And these two were smart enough to say, we're just going to stay there if this is the scripts we're being offered.
But Scott Silver says yes. So
Scott Silver says, well, I wrote it. I think it's good. I can do it.
Yeah, they passed his script around Hollywood and nobody was taking it. And they're like, just please do it. We paid you $1 million to write this thing. Just got to do it anyway.
And we should mention, you didn't mention this before, but like, and again, to get ahead of ourselves a little bit, you mentioned how he had great success after this, writing 8 Mile, The Fighter, and the 2 Joker films. How much directorial success did he have after this, Chris? Oh, none. This is the last thing he ever directed.
Yeah. You know what? I think we need to start talking about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm gonna kill those kids.
They're my kids. If anybody's gonna kill them, it's gonna be me.
You smacked Detective Tricky in the mouth. What do you think is a joke?
Okay, Bob, I'll take care of this.
Yeah, Bob.
Hey, you're policemen now. If you think it's a joke, I could put you back into the cells where I found you. Stop screwing around and start doing your job.
It was their last chance.
They're not real cops. They can't even carry guns, for God's sake.
Where'd you get that from? Dude, it's my dad's.
To start over.
Is this all the cops do? Sit around in cars waiting?
We can go get some donuts.
Stand back. No guns. Guns are bad.
Shut up!
Julie, you'll go inside, blend, and hopefully get recruited.
Hey, why does she always get to be the prostitute?
God, this job is hell. Nice job.
I was blending.
Yeah, you just blended your ass right out of the club.
Dude, your cover's been blown. Your cover has been blown, all right? Your cover's been blown. Bro, I'm still under. I got it. Stop, please! Oh! Dude, I'm sorry about the car. It was just water.
Now, the only people they can trust
Dude, we're cops.
We're not that kind of cops, man.
are each other.
I didn't think we were in on it.
It was a setup.
This is like one of those dirty cop drug things.
So what now?
Showtime.
Jump! What? Jump! Dirty cops, props at the airport. I feel like one of us should say we're getting too old for this.
Are you guys really cops?
Yeah, you know, we all have superpowers. Okay, wait.
Three problem teens, previously sent to jail, are offered a deal to work as undercover cops and expose an intricate drug ring. When their recruiter is murdered, the trio gets caught up in a deadly setup in which they have to clear their names and discover who killed their mentor, and for what reason.
Cool. The Mod Squad. Chris, I will go first. I believe this is a first-time watch for both of us, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yes, because it was probably, we were the first.
Yeah, do you want me to check you again? Do you want me to check the letterbox just in case you
No,
forgot?
I think this one, I'm good.
Okay, good.
I mean, we were the first two people to watch this movie probably in like 20 years. So
Yeah. It was the algorithm was alerted, and like that one guy by like that one computer that's like falling asleep on his knuckles just like woke up. Was like, oh my god, alert the villagers.
Yeah. I'll go first, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush like I sometimes do. Let me just start by I'm just gonna tell you right off the bat what I think the two problems are with the Mod Squad. A movie I will just say I think sucks and sucks hard.
I first of all, I love when you just have to get to the point.
Yeah, I mean, why beat around the bush here? I feel like you could probably tell a little bit from even my comments in the pre-trailer sequence. What I think about this movie, but I want to explain. I want to start to get like actually critical and talk about what I think the miscalculations were here. Besides just making a Mod Squad movie,
Sure.
But part of that goes to my first miscalculation in that I think on a script level, right, there's a really big problem in the way this movie just throws us into the Mod Squad already being the Mod Squad. I was very sure going into this film, now at least being slightly aware of what the premise was, okay, this movie is going to be the origin story of the Mod Squad. And instead, we're instantly met. We meet the Mod Squad in the very first scene. We see them get arrested. And even there, you're thinking like, okay, yeah, this is the moment where they all get arrested and they become the Mod Squad. But no, that's actually a misdirect where we learn that they were like fake arrested. And this was them on, I don't know what mission it was, but they've been the Mod Squad for a while. And the movie just like throws us kind of in media res and we pick right up there. And I think that's a huge miscalculation because the problem is without an origin story and without enough like allusions to their past, I had a hard time throughout this entire movie understanding not only what their level of authority was and like what they could do as the Mod Squad, but also whether the three of them like this job, whether they want to do it, why they are like so loyal to Captain Greer. All that stuff is like not there. So you have these three characters who you can never really understand and get behind, and that just puts you at like, bad footing with the movie in general. So that's critical problem number one. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of little problems, but I'm talking about the two critical problems. The second critical problem is this movie doesn't know what tone to adopt. It's a tonally confused movie, and it only gets once you get to about halfway through, the movie suddenly starts realizing that it should be a comedy and wants to start being funny, and that hasn't really been the case for the first half, and it starts leaning into that a little more. And when it got to that point, it's not doing either of them well. It's not doing the serious half well, and it's not doing the comedy half well. But when it got to the comedy half, the one thing, like my thesis statement about this movie would be, this movie, 1999's The Mod Squad, really made me realize how genius the direction was they took the 21 Jump Street movie. Like, 21 Jump Street is the movie that this probably should have been, in that if you're going to make, and I know, again, no offense to the TV show, which is very successful for what it was at the time, but if you're going to make a modern movie about a TV show that has such a dated premise, and such a premise that like people might kind of laugh and scoff at initially, then it's probably a better idea to slightly poke fun at it. and do like a more comedic tinge on it. I think they really shot themselves in the foot with this movie by going, yeah, that idea of like three delinquents, like, this part of this youthful revolution that's going on in the world being turned into cops. That's not the same in 99 as it was in 68. It doesn't have the same impact. And it just doesn't like feel the same way. There was no point in this movie where I understood what they could do that the cops couldn't. I think they even still say that. And I'm like, well, what are they doing that cops can't? So I think this movie needed to be a parody of the Mod Squad concept, actually, especially again, when you have actors who look older than what they were being told they are. You could have made that the joke of the film, as 21 Jump Street did. So yeah, to wrap it up, those are my two critical problems. I have more to say, but I just thought this was a giant miss, and after watching it, I'm not surprised this is a movie that time has forgot, or that it was immediately forgotten when it came out.
Trev, bear with me. Can I name several films from 1999 for you?
Sure.
I'd like to remind the listeners the absolute bangers and iconic films that came out in that year.
It's recognized as one of the greatest movie years of all time.
And I'm about to list a lot. And that's not even half. So bear with me. The Sixth Sense, Toy Story 2, Star Wars Episode 1, The Matrix, The Mummy, Austin Powers 2, She's All That, Office Space, Cruel Intentions, 10 Things I Hate About You, Entrapment, Big Daddy, South Park, American Pie, Blair Witch Project, Iron Giant, American Beauty, Fight Club, Pokemon, Sleepy Hollow, The Green Mile, Talented Mr. Ripley. The Mod Squad is not one of these. The Mod Squad is such a piece of shit. I am exactly where you're at. It's what a great start to Summer Sweeps, by the way. The Avengers and then the Mod Squad, where we're both like barely gonna give it 1 star. Man, what a cluster. 100% about throwing you into this movie. Usually I'm into that, especially when I know the iconography already. So something like Spider-Man and Batman that we've seen a million times. Okay, fine. Throw me into an adventure. That's okay. The culture has hung on to that. Now, the culture has not hung on to the Mod Squad. Okay. Yeah. I need to see why these kids are together, how they got together, who they were before, who they are now, why they were chosen, why their lives are intertwined, their relationship with their recruiter, which is a huge issue because he eventually dies in the middle of the movie and you just feel nothing because you know nothing. Okay, you know what? Remember in The Avengers I said to you, what does a TV adaptation need to do in the theater? Or a theatrical adaptation of a TV show need to do. And it needs to lure the old fans in and give them what they wanted from the show and what they remembered from the show, but on a grand scale, of course. But then you have to bring in the new viewers, okay? New viewers need their hands held for something like this. They need to know who the fuck they care about. And this movie, because it throws you in, you don't know these characters at all. You just don't understand them, so you don't like them. They're kind of obnoxious. And then the murder mystery is just one of the most uninteresting mysteries ever, where the criminals are just caught telling their evil plans, in earshot of the heroes.
You are a pimp, Billy. A pimp. You do drugs. That doesn't mean you should sell them.
Howard,
just say no, man.
Howard, just tell me when and where it's going down, and I will bring the cash, okay?
Okay. You want to be a big shot, Billy? You want to make the big fucking deal? Okay, you're in. But you better not mess with me, Billy, or I'll fucking crush your balls.
Howard, I would not mess with you.
Or the band. These guys really got a future.
Okay. Can I use your phone?
Who are you going to call?
I'm going to call the cops, Howard.
Funny. Keep it low.
Bob? Hey. Yeah, I just talked to him. Deal set. You relax, Bob. None of them have any idea that I know that they're cops, especially her. Look, I'm her goddamn dream man, okay? Right, no, you listen to me, Bob. If you want to have somebody else take a shot like Tricky or one of the other men in blue that you...
It comes down to an extremely boring narrative where it's just a waste of resources, right? Like you said, the cast is young and upcoming. They are talented. There's a little bit of energy to the filmmaking, but the script is just so uninteresting and it's so terrible. And then I wrote exactly that about 21 Jump Street. I said, this is what 21 Jump Street, that's what they did. This is what they should have done. You got to take the piss. You got to take the piss out of a concept like this. You can't go dead set and being dramatic because it just does not work in 1999. It does not work in 2024. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously taking the piss would have been the better route, but if you're going to play it serious, then at least try to actually be in tuned to like the differences of like what was going on with like youth culture in 99 as opposed to 68, right? Not to say they play these kids like hippies, but they're not, I don't know. I was 18 at the time this movie came out, and I didn't feel like these characters were like really speaking to what the underlying social issues were of like kids at that time.
Well, Omar Epps was 29 years old in this movie, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Even on a script level, right? Putting aside that same problem the TV show had, but I mean, there was this bubbling like unease and sense of like something about to break with youth at the time, as evidenced by Woodstock 99, right? Like the ultimate like symbol of, oh my God, the 90s were so like thought to be so peaceful and such a great time, and meanwhile like no one was paying attention to this kind of like bubbling undercurrent of like rage that's coming up in a particular kind of especially white male, right? And Giovanni Ribisi's character could have maybe represented that, but these filmmakers have like no interest in that. They just think like, okay, we'll take the same, and again, why is it the same characters from the TV show? If you're gonna make this movie, why not have this be a continuation of the Mod Squad?
I know,
and have them be new characters so that the original actors can come back as the old characters and be like, yeah, we used to be the Mod Squad. Even the parody 21 Jump Street movies got that right. but this movie goes like, why don't we'll just take the same characters, give them the same origins, and plop them into 99? And it's like, well, no, it doesn't work. The Omar Epps character is a great example of why that doesn't work. The thing about, I only watched the one episode, but you and I read enough about the Mod Squad, and I saw it in the one episode I watched to know that the concept of like a young black man who was arrested at the Watts riots being made into an undercover cop, that had so much power to it in 68 that Lincoln Link Hayes, the Omar Epps character, just doesn't have in 99. Not to say obviously racism is always a problem, but it wasn't a problem in the same way it was in 68 and 99. So his character is like missing that integral element that made the Clarence Williams version so powerful. And all Omar Epps is left with is like they have one cop who keeps calling him boy, to kind of speak to the racism element. And otherwise, he's just like this like sullen character who's always just like kind of staring off in the distance, and we don't know why. We don't know why like Giovanni Ribisi is so weird, which is another strange choice. I get it's like, oh, Giovanni Ribisi has this like this bizarre crackling energy, and all these movies wanted to like feed on it the time. But Pete was like the normal guy in the original show. He was like the stoic leader, and here they make him this like bizarre goofball. It's just like it's a lot of strange decisions in a movie. Again, just a misguided movie.
Well, Ribisi's going full Ribisi in this movie. It's so strange because like,
and I like Ribisi, but full Ribisi is like,
he's too unhinged.
Yeah.
In the original show, Pete comes from a rich family, right? And he like steals a car. Like he's
so square that because I remember I watched the pilot. He's so square that like a big part of the pilot is like Link keeps making fun of him and like saying like you don't belong with us, right? Why are you here? He keeps calling him like rich boy, and it's not until like near the end of the pilot that he explains that like, well, yeah, I was rich, but I like rebelled against my family and got kicked out, and so that's when they start to bond. But he's so square that like Link really thinks like, are you like like a mole or something? But then the Ribisi just plays him like I don't know, like this.
He's a lunatic,
caffeinated lunatic. Yeah.
He's got this manic intensity, which just doesn't fit. Like it fits for other Ribisi roles, but in here, he's so wild and unhinged and obnoxious that I don't like him, and I don't want to see him at all in the movie. Yeah. I don't think he fits with the three. I mean, it's funny too that Omar Epps spends so much time away from the other two characters, which is another miscalculation. Don't you want to see the Mod Squad together? I don't know about the pilot, but I'm sure they're together for most of that hour. But in this one, they split all three up in certain ways, shapes, and form. Especially, I love when they take Claire Danes out of it, where she, instead of investigating their murdered mentor, she starts investigating some fling that she used to have. That eventually does tie together, but so what? I want to see these three work together, and she's just for the whole movie, she's just sad about a boy. And I think that's regressive for a concept that's supposed to be progressive, right?
Yeah. And then the movie makes the odd decision of like after that, like after it's revealed that the guy she's pining for is actually a villain. Which, by the way, everybody watching the movie who's seen a movie before knows from the very first moment he walks on screen, and she, the cop, is somehow too stupid to realize he's actually a villain. But once that is revealed, the movie goes, well, it's a movie though. We need kissing later, right? So the movie decides to like hook up Ribisi and Claire Danes as characters, and it's like.
So
I was not shipping these two at all, you know? Like, why can't they just be the Mod Squad? Why can't they just be like partners? And if they're not, then honestly, I don't know. Whatever chemistry exists between them is pretty null in general. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like, as we talked about the kiss in the show, I feel like Julie and Link would be the more interesting couple because Ribisi's character is so annoying. You kind of like don't want to see any woman put up with him. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
And his performance isn't helped by the editing. Did you notice the bizarre jump cuts that the movie was doing? Like there's the beginning interrogation scene. Oh no, I guess midway through it's an interrogation scene. And the jump cuts are like supposed to disorient you from what Ribisi's talking about. He's freaking out, and then he's quiet, and then he's like huge, and then he's quiet, and then later on he's crying to another cop, and then it cuts and he's quiet, and it's like he's just a fucking psychopath. Yeah. And then now I'm just putting together that Scott Silver went on to write Joker.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say. It's like, I'm kind of I think Joker's fine, but I've long been in that camp who I think it's highly overrated. And in particular, I've always said that I feel like Joker is a movie that is like so simplistic. Like it just wears like its messaging on its sleeve in such a heavy-handed way that it's like almost laughable to me. And it's saved by pretty great performances and some pretty good direction from Todd Phillips and a banger of a score. Yeah. But the script I thought is just like so basic, and then I feel so justified in saying that watching the Mod Squad and going, yeah, see, that's how this guy writes. But the problem is here is like the characterizations are all so basic and so obvious. Yeah. But the one thing he forgot to do was like in that basic writing is deliver explain his own premise. I know you and I hate exposition dumps, but this is a movie that just needed one early on. So can I tell you a little bit? I'll bring it up when it's relevant. So let me actually compare this to the pilot for a moment.
Sure.
Because I watched the pilot and I was like, okay, what was actually, if you told me that Scott Silver only watched the pilot and then went off to make the movie, I would actually believe you. Because there's actually some shocking similarities between the pilot and the movie. I do think almost like the movie was trying to be like an adaptation of that episode, which I believe was filmed as like a 90-minute TV movie, and then they edited it down to like an hour for like the pilot or whatever. Yeah. But it tells the origin. But what it does that's actually similar is it starts with the scene of the three of them being arrested by the cops. And then it does the same thing where you learn that actually they're already the Mod Squad. So it's like, oh my God, I was watching them. It's like, oh, they're doing the same thing that I hated the movie for. But except here, the difference is you're soon led to believe that, oh, that was them on their first mission, and they kind of screwed up, and they brought them in. And then you go to like a long training montage where it shows them kind of getting put through police academy to get their skills to be better. And during that, their superior, Adam Greer, the Captain Greer, he's like talking to another detective about what he sees as like the purpose of the Mod Squad and why he picked these three. And I'm like, see, that's just the movie was just missing that, you know? And even like you said, they kill Greer in this movie, which again was this thing that like, it's kind of like the Mission Impossible thing with the Peter Graves character and then, killing him in the movie version and like maybe like go, oh, the shock value for the old fans. But the problem here is that we don't have seasons of a connection to this character, and you haven't given us the origin. You haven't shown him. It's all lip service, right?
You haven't seen him mentor these kids.
Yeah, we haven't seen him find them. We haven't seen him be a father figure to them. So when he gets killed, I don't understand. I don't know why they should be that sad. And in fact,
and they're barely sad.
They barely are. Yeah, that's the thing. So, which I guess is like kind of makes sense because we haven't seen anything that justifies why they would be. So
they kill Greer off screen, and then the three of them find his dead body in an alley. And it's played so flat. It's almost like all three are like, oh, he's dead. Okay, moving on. Time to go. It's so much so, Trev. I don't know if you thought what I thought, but I totally expected Greer to be alive by the end. I thought he would come back in some way and be like, that's now you're fucking Modder Squad, like maybe like.
Well, I had kind of a similar thought, except I thought he might come back as like a villain. Because again, when they killed him, I was like, oh, is this what they're doing? Remember, that's what Mission Impossible did, right?
Totally.
They took the hero of the TV show and turned him into the villain. I was like, are they doing the same thing here, where Greer's going to turn out to be like in on it? But it only be kind of because Dennis Farina is like too good to like take out 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
You know, like that's one of many examples of like, you know, we'll talk about some of the other casts in a moment, but there's a lot of like great actors in this who are really underutilized or just utilized poorly. And I would definitely say if you have Dennis Farina and you've got him to play the Captain Greer, who was an iconic character from the entire run of the show, maybe don't kill him 20 minutes in. Maybe let him be the leader throughout the whole movie, and maybe then you still have him around for any potential sequels. But hey, I'm not these guys.
And the crazy thing is in the research, we didn't find any hints at this being a hack job. You know, like the Avengers was. It does feel like this was the idea from the beginning, was to get Dennis Farina in this movie, have him in the movie for 2 minutes, kill him off, and that's it. It doesn't seem like these roles were diminished in post. It feels like this is the movie, and that's what's so strangely like, you know, that's what pisses me off, I think.
Yeah. Though to be fair, research for this movie is kind of tough because no one cares about this movie.
That's true.
This is the rare movie that the Wikipedia page doesn't have a plot breakdown. It just has like the tagline essentially, and it's you know, I don't know how long the Wikipedia page has existed and how often people look at it, but in the full cast list, it also lists Clarence Williams III being in it as Link's grandfather and Peggy Lipton as Julie's aunt. Mm-hmm. Now, unless they saw some cut I don't know about, that is not true. None of the original cast is in this movie.
Every once in a while, listeners, for prep, I'll see if there's like a retrospective review or something on YouTube of people like talking about something from the old times or retro reviews. It's just any conversation at all to get a temperature check. Not anything. No. The only thing I could find was one Ebert clip of him talking about the movie, which I have the quote here. He hated it. He gave it thumbs down. And this is funny what he says. The investigative techniques used by the Mod Squad are sneaking up on people, peeping through windows, hiding in closets, and tape recording conversations by hiding around corners. And of course, all the bad guys reveal all their plans and secrets on that recording. He calls it a waste of resources, like I said before, and extremely underwritten. And I think that's a huge problem with this movie.
It's funny because I have Ebert's like written review up in front of me, and he's got another great banger here where he says he's talking about one of the scenes in the movie that you were just alluding to his other comment where Pete, the Giovanni Ribisi character, tape records some of the bad guys, and Ebert says he creeps up in a hideout and hides behind a wall while tape recording a full confession. It goes without saying his tape will later be played over a loudspeaker in order to incriminate the bad guys. He uses one of those little $29 micro-cassette recorders. You know, the kind that can record with perfect fidelity at 20 yards outdoors on a windy day.
And also, hold on, though. He records them. He runs back to the squad.
Yes.
And they all say,
yes,
we should go bring this recording to internal affairs, right?
Yep. Yes.
And then they say, no, we can't do that because we can't trust anyone.
It's just voices on the tape, man.
The hell with voices on a tape. We bring this into IA. That's it.
Link's right. They're not going to believe it.
Look, we can't trust anybody, all right? It's just us.
So then I'm thinking, okay, well then they got to come up with some like crazy plan then to incriminate these guys. If they're not going to use the recording, then they got to incriminate them some way, somehow. And what do? Exactly what Ebert said. They play the recording on a loudspeaker anyways.
Chris, when I watched most of this movie just kind of stone-faced. When that happened, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
Just the matter of like, are you kidding me? They just did the thing that 20 minutes earlier they said they can't do, and that's how you resolve the conflict at the end. Oh, so like the whole last 20 minutes of this movie was you're telling us it was pointless. You're telling us they could have just done what Giovanni Ribisi suggested, and they all poo-pooed, and then he just does it, and they're like, oh, I guess you're right.
So stupid.
Oh, why'd I just sit through this bullshit action scene at the end then?
I also didn't like Giovanni Ribisi using a gun in the
Aaron Spelling fought against on the show. He said he never wanted the Mod Squad to arrest other kids, and he never wanted them to use guns.
So when Pete uses a gun, especially when Pete, characterized in the movie, is just a fucking psycho, it just doesn't sit well. It's very strange. Yes, he never shoots the gun, but he aims it at people. He's threatening with it.
Stand back. Stand back!
Oh, shit.
Stand back!
What the hell is wrong with you, man?
Bro, stand back.
Where'd you get that from?
Dude, it's my dad's.
Oh, yeah, you know how to use it?
Bro, you just point and shoot.
Look, just don't point and shoot at me, okay?
What?
You know what? No guns, okay? No guns. Guns are bad. Shut up! I know a guy wants... Shut up!
It's just, it doesn't sit well with the original intent of the show. And I found it, from an outsider, and, you know, I have no skin in the game here, but I did find that disrespectful, if I'm being honest.
That's like a moment, like, you know, we don't know, and like we're probably not going to get a Scott Silver interview on this, especially after he listens to this episode. But that felt like a studio kind of thing, like, well, it's a cop movie, right? They got to hold a gun at some point, so one of the heroes has to have a gun, you know. And it's like, I wish someone could have fought for that and been like, no, I mean, there's 5 seasons of a show where they never did, you know, and at least like. That's the thing too. Like you say, if it sits strangely to you, maybe it's because if you remove the gun, then that's what starts to like at least clarify how they're different than other cops, right? Like if they don't have the ability, I think Rebert alluded to this too in his written review. I watch this movie and I don't know if they can arrest people. You know, we're never told that. I don't know if they can like legally interrogate people, if any evidence they collect is valid. So, like, I'm trying to feel like, what is their value to the police? So what do they do in this movie, even before they're on the outs with the police for the majority of it? But before that, what is their value? What can they do that regular police can't? Because all we see them do is be sent into clubs to, like, listen to potential drug deals. And I'm thinking, well, like, any cop that looks kind of young could do that.
Totally.
Right? They already look 35. So, like, just get another cop who looks 35 to go in and listen to it. They're not. There's nothing else of value. But if you, like, told us again, if you were willing to do some exposition and said, like, well, what makes them different is they don't use weapons and, like, they just have to use their total guiles and, like, their wits and then it's like, oh, well, they might start to be somewhat interesting to me. But then you just instead have a crazy guy with a gun and I'm like, well, that's kind of like every other cop movie. So whatever.
Totally. I wrote this down, which is basically what you're saying, but they just seem like young cops versus being teenagers recruited as cops. And
young cops who are already like in the I'm getting too old for this shit, I'm ready to retire mode.
Which they even say that line in the film.
Yes. Yep.
So speaking to your Joker criticism of just repeating things from other movies, he did it again. And hey, and you know what? I'm actually a little bit of a Joker defender, but I sometimes I know when I'm beat. Let's just say that. But yeah, the age thing is a big problem. I know it was a problem in the show, but also back then everybody looked old all the time. You know, but in this one it's even worse because Omar Epps is 29, as I said earlier. Ribisi is 25. Claire Danes is only 20, by the way, when this movie came out.
And so she does look the youngest.
She does look the youngest, and she is the best part, I would say. She fits the best in the film in that way. But because Epps and Ribisi are so much older than what they should be, I just can't take them seriously as being young adolescents. It's just when you see Omar Epps walk on the screen as a 30-year-old, that man's 30. You know, like that's a grown man with a mortgage and like, you know, he's paid off his car at this point and like it doesn't work and especially when they split them off.
That explains his performance, actually. He's spending the whole movie thinking about how he's got like a PTA meeting he's got to go to soon.
Well, you say that, but he's mostly thinking about his pants being too tight. Omar Epps, he had mentioned in several interviews that because of that Levi's jeans tie-in, they were all wearing Levi's throughout the movie, and he says anytime I'm wearing like a frown or grimacing or just looking uncomfortable, it's because I was my balls were being squished.
Well,
so yeah,
you know what, Omar? You know what, Omar? I felt the same way watching the movie. So,
and you know, and at least Omar Epps went on to be in House for 175 episodes.
No, all three of these actors had, thankfully, better success after this. You know? Because this was like on an upswing, like a potential upswing moment for all of them, right? These were all three stars who were like being plucked to be the next big thing, and I do think this movie kind of like stumbled them all a little bit. And that actually goes to Chris. Can we do a quick sidebar here? Can we do a quick like actor performance sidebar? I know we don't like to talk shit about actors.
Nope, never.
But I want to ask you something because you just a moment ago said that Claire Danes is the best part of the movie, and I want to ask you: Do you saying that? Do you think you're saying that because you really think she gives the best performance, or are you saying it because 1999 Claire Danes is so cute?
Yeah,
is she good in this movie?
No, she's hot and she's yeah, she's you know,
like where are you at in Claire Danes in general? Because I find her she's interesting to me because I think she's
got a cry face. You know, she's famous for the cry face. Yeah, that's a big one.
It's weird because in my head because she broke with My So-Called Life. To my mind, she's like this eternally young actor, and it's kind of you have to kind of forget she's already had like a multi-decade career. But I really don't think she found herself as like a full performer until Homeland.
Yeah,
and that like finally unlocked something in her.
She's always Kate Brewster for me for T3. Like,
and she's good in that, but
she's
again,
good in that. And a movie that is criminally underrated, I think.
But not much. She's good in it, but not much is being asked of her either. She's kind of just the lead female.
And she's really good at just being afraid and screaming and stuff. So yeah, I get that. But then also she's lovely in Stardust. I love Stardust. But those two films are like that's my Claire Danes. I never watched Homeland. I know that is like a huge thing that everybody loves, but I never watched it.
It's one of those shows I started and really, really liked and never watched all the way to the end. And just I don't remember like why I fell out of it, but it just kind of started to be repetitive to me. But she was great in it.
Yeah. So that's where I am with where I'm at with her. Giovanni Ribisi, I like when he pops up in things. Gone in 60 Seconds, he's great in. I love when he pops up in Friends at any time. He's got really good comedic timing playing that unhinged thing.
He was like at a time where nobody knew who he was. I remember seeing Saving Private Ryan back in the day and being like, who's that guy? Like, he pops in that,
Him and Dennis Farina are in that together, which is funny.
Yeah. I'm sure they were probably making this point and going, remember when we were in a Spielberg movie? But no, then he goes on, and I think Boiler Room is like right after this, and he's great in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely remember him being like, oh, who's that guy in Boiler Room? But again, I haven't seen him go full Ribisi yet. So,
and that's the thing, his manic energy is something that I actually do like. Like I said that as a negative before,
you have to harness it well, because I mean, like the crazy thing is this isn't even. To his credit, at least, and to the movie's credit, this isn't even the most embarrassing Giovanni Ribisi movie of '99, because he also makes The Other Sister in '99, the movie where him and Juliette Lewis both play developmentally challenged people, and it's a romantic comedy about two developmentally challenged people who fall in love, and it's not a movie that would be released today. I don't think.
Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder warned us never to do that, but that seems like that's they did it.
I want to talk about some of the other cast members, but the way I'll get to one of them, because I know there's like a big one that we haven't even, I don't think we mentioned his name yet, or maybe we briefly have, but because you mentioned that you thought Claire Danes was the best part, and we've acknowledged now that that's just because she's looking good in them jeans. Can I talk about what I think is actually the best part of the movie, or the best parts? And I want to see if you agree.
Yeah.
I do think the movie oddly comes to life a little bit during the sequences with the great Michael Lerner as Howard, the music producer. Because
famed Mayor Ebert from Godzilla.
yes. I love Michael. Now, Michael Lerner is like, you just said this like for Ribisi. Lerner is one of those guys who, when he pops up in something, I'm just always like, great. He's just awesome. And his parts in this, I don't know why the movie's doing this, but the movie's been such a slog up until this point. There are like these sequences where he's this music producer who's in league with the bad guys. He's like the guy who's making the big drug deal that is like the key centerpiece of this whole case the Mod Squad is investigating. And so Omar Epps decides to go undercover and act like he's an employee of the main bad guy who's come to check in on Michael Lerner's character. And then begins a series of scenes where the movie tries to be like Blue Velvet to like get back to the David Lynch connection, and suddenly it just gets really weird where Michael Lerner like asks Omar Epps to dance with him, and then it's like this it's even like shot like a David Lynch kind of scene where the camera goes above them as they're dancing, and they're playing Lerner's character as just like, oh, it's not like he doesn't have an attraction to Lincoln, he just like really likes dancing with people to see.
He's like I'm not gay, like but I just like to dance around with whoever.
I don't know, those scenes were just so bizarre that I couldn't help but like enjoy them, because I don't even know like what they're going for there, but it's the only moment where the movie tries to get that weird, and it just had an energy that was like, I kind of wish the rest of the movie was doing this.
Want to dance? What? Come on. Dance with me. Oh, I love this song. Come on. It's just a little dance. I'm not a fag. I just like to dance. You lead. I'll be the girl. Yeah.
I should get going, man. I got some business to handle.
You're a classy dancer, you know that? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I forgot. What's your name?
Link.
Spin me, Link.
What?
I said, spin me. could enter a contest.
I also really like Richard Jenkins. Anytime he pops up in anything, he's like the best. So I know I say Claire Danes is the best. I guess I'm talking about the trio, of course, right? But Richard Jenkins is always a treat in everything. I loved him in Shape of Water. He was just incredible.
Cabin in the Woods, man.
Cabin in the Woods, yeah, of course, Cabin in the Woods. Yeah,
He's part of what I still to this day consider maybe the best ever title being put up on screen in a movie. Is Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, he's great in this. I will say his character, again, this is like another problem with the movie doing the in media res and throwing us in, is that there's a reveal about his character. I don't know why we're dancing around it. Spoiler alert. He's like the Captain Greer's best friend, and he's another detective. And when Greer is killed, he's always like we learn earlier on that he hates the Mod Squad. But then after Greer is killed, he comes in and he's actually kind of nice to them for a moment. And in my head, like I clocked it. I was like, oh, okay, the movie's going to end with him becoming like the new Greer, right? He's gonna like the twist of this movie is going to be that he always acted like he hated them, but really was tough love, and now he's like their new commander. No, he's the bad guy. Yeah. and the thing is like when that reveal comes,
hold on, they're all the bad guy.
Well, they're all the bad guys, but like when that happens, I just didn't care because again, we don't know this character, so like the twist doesn't land. Like I'm like, yeah, well, you showed him as an asshole at the beginning, then you hinted he might not be an asshole, but no, he's just an asshole. This twist would play better if he was always on their side from the beginning, not to get screenwriting 101 on them. But there you
go. Michael O'Neill shows up as another cop. Sam McMurray as a cop. It's got a lot of good character actors for sure.
A surprise Eddie Griffin cameo.
Oh yeah, right. He wasn't there. Yeah, like this is the thing. This movie has the potential. It has the pieces, okay? But putting the pieces and the talent together in this way just fumbles so hard.
But you did tell me that you think this is Josh Brolin's best work, right?
Yeah, sure.
Josh Brolin plays Billy, the aforementioned ex-flame of Julie, who she reconnects with, and then is surprised to find out, oh no, he's a drug dealer and a pimp, and he's involved in this case. Probably, I recently watched one of those, occasionally, I can't remember if it's Vanity Fair or GQ, but they'll sit an actor down and have them talk about some of their most iconic roles. Yep, and I love those videos, and I watched the Josh Brolin one, and Josh Brolin is an actor I love today. He's just such a great cinematic presence.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he brought up the Mod Squad in that video. I don't think he hit on that one.
This discussion of us talking about it for now, over an hour, might be the most this movie's been talked about in 25 years. Yeah. Truly. They didn't talk about this movie that much in the board meetings after the failure. No. Let's be that. Also, to go back to what you're saying about that this movie didn't adapt for the right time, it tried to keep doing the old 70s stuff, but in the wrong era. The score, going for this retro 70s funk thing, slightly new metal-ish as well.
Yeah, that's the thing is, again, what did I say at the beginning about it? Yep, not committing to a tone, right? No. Either give me the funky, 70s, wah-wah music the whole time, or give me the dated but at least kind of funny 90s new metal the whole time. Yeah. Don't keep going back and forth on me. And, again, because then I just... You want to meet the movie on its level, and I have a really hard time understanding, does the movie want me to laugh at it? Is the movie trying to wink at me slightly or not? And I think at certain times the movie does, and other times it doesn't, and it just doesn't feel like it knows the lane, and that's represented even in the music. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not much that I need to say more about the movie, really.
I mean, you're in a, we haven't we've been talking about the movie as a whole, but geez, you're in for trouble, and that maybe it's a sign to the people making the movie that it was a bad move and that it was a misguided decision to even adapt, this old 68 property to a 99 movie when you have to start the film by defining your own title. The fact that the movie starts with on-screen text defining what mod is.
Yeah.
I'll read. I copied this down. The very first thing we see on screen is mod. Young people in the 60s, 70s, and today, noted for their emphasis on stylish dress, often as a symbol for their alienation from conventional society. Okay. And then, okay, so it's funny enough that they have to define mod because people don't know what that means anymore. But then it defines squad. It says squad, a small group of people working together. And again, like, if the rest of the movie was pitched at like 21 Jump Street levels, then the next time I watch this movie, which I would, because guess what? 21 Jump Street rules, and I've rewatched it multiple times.
Yeah, totally.
If I knew that it was a comedy, I'd probably laugh when Squad came up and be like, oh, that's funny. Totally. But here, I have to wonder, I don't think the movie means it as a joke. I think the movie really thinks its audience is so dumb that they need to define both words.
Oh, yeah. No, the movie is played way too serious. It's way too serious. Even so much so when Julie is she finds out that that Billy is a pimp still and fucking around on her. She's been sober for like a year or something, and then immediately she goes on like a bender. You know, she goes to find a 2-6, and then she drives out to like a cliff, and then she gets drunk, and then she drives home, and then she just sits like on her kitchen floor, and it's like super dramatic and like ugly. You know, and again, it's not taking the piss, so it doesn't sit well when you're watching this young girl drown her sorrows in a bottle of vodka. You know,
and then it'll like hard cut to like, oh, now Giovanni Ribisi's accidentally running Omar Epps' car through the car wash. Wah, wah, wah. And you're like, oh my God, what are you doing, movie?
and screaming that he's a cop.
Yeah,
I thought the Mod Squad were undercover. In numerous times in this movie, they announce themselves. Like it's so ridiculous that it seems like they're bumbling young cops, like we keep saying, but not in the playful 21 Jump Street way at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And again, Ribisi can do comedy. So, and Brolin can do comedy. All these people can do comedy. Like, I'm assuming Claire Danes can. She's pretty versatile. But we have a talented cast. But like you said, it's confused. It doesn't want to stick to a tone. It's too dramatic. It is underwritten. It's weirdly paced. It's just a total nothing. This is just a total nothing movie. I will never, just like Avengers. God damn it. After I'm done editing this thing, I will never think about it again. And that's a real shame, especially the amount of money, the talent, the legacy of the old show, which again was acclaimed. 5 seasons, 123 episodes. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And this one really does hurt the idea of the legacy, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just by misunderstanding the very like central idea of the show and like its relevance to, you know, it's like you said, it's a very era specific show, and I don't think this movie realized that. And it's like, I don't think anyone's good in this movie except Michael Lerner, like I said. But I think everyone else is just like whatever. But it's not a movie I lay at the feet of the actors. This is a movie that's just conceptually broken, and they kind of had no chance. They were given a script that doesn't know what it wants to do with this property, doesn't know if it wants to be funny or serious, tries to have it both ways, doesn't explain the characters or its premise to us enough for us to care or understand their mission and their abilities. I mean, like you'd say at the beginning, you have like the little montage at the start that's supposed to be like TV, like a TV opening, and it tells us that Link is like an arsonist. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess that'll come into play later, right? No, there's no point where he uses his arsonism skills, you know, and like I don't know, it's just it's a total miss. And when we did the Avengers, I mentioned how, you know, it kind of got me looking into that show, and then I ended up watching like one episode to see what it was like, and it kind of like really made me feel like, oh man, this is such a miss, but I do love the show. You know, the show is so cool. And I told you I ended up ordering like a DVD set of that show. With the Mod Squad, I watched the pilot, and I will say the pilot is better than this, not surprisingly. But I think because the show is so dated and because it's speaking to a particular time, I wasn't really taken with it in the same way. I might end up revisiting some future episodes just based off of those guest stars you talked about. Like I love Vincent Price, and hearing that he's in an episode of the Mod Squad, I kind of want to see what that's like. But yeah, even as someone who watched the pilot and walked away like, whatever, I still wasn't that hot on it, I can still watch this movie and go like, I'm not even a fan of the show, and this still makes me mad that they got it this wrong and kind of pissed on a show that obviously did have a fan base and for good reasons was a big hit at the time. So yeah, it's always a shame when a property gets so mangled in the translation. Yeah.
And I think it's still a good concept though. Like if this was to pop up, you know, in the next couple of years as, you know, an Amazon Prime series, but then it's focused squarely on the now. And if they develop it as the now, and they speak to our times today, I think it does have some value. I think it would be something that would be maybe interesting in some way. Like I don't want to
TikTok Squad.
Yeah,
these kids can make synchronized dances like none of our adult cops can.
Just think of the what's Gen Z lingo, the mid squad or something, Like
I think that is like, you mentioned you talked about like some of the subject matter the original show tackled.
Mm-hmm.
I think the toughest thing, and just in looking at some episode descriptions, I think the show did a much better version, is the key to this concept. And as we said, this is what the movie is missing, is you really need to show us and tell us, you need to do both. What can the Mod Squad do that regular cops can't?
Yeah.
What is their actual benefit? What is their actual use? Like, what is so important that a good-hearted cop like Greer would be willing to put 3 kids who are not officially cops in harm's way? He's like sending them into dangerous situations. There needs to be some kind of justification for that. And I think you're right that if they could actually figure that out today, then I could see this being revised. I do think it would probably be important to do it as a TV show because
definitely.
I think that episodic nature allows you to tackle different social issues and make the show seem relevant. I think that's the thing too is, it sounds like the show was really successful because of that, right? It was speaking to these social issues. It was hitting on characters people hadn't seen before. This movie, there's nothing social about it.
No, it's another crooked cop story.
Yeah, it's another drug dealing cops action movie, and that's a big miss too. There should have been some kind of social relevance at play here. So maybe like an Amazon series or something. But I just wonder. I don't see it happening. I think this movie was probably the final nail in this IP's coffin, just because it is so outdated now, and this was such a disaster. I don't think people are clamoring for a return of the Mod Squad, and even I think the Avengers is easier to bring back because it's just an idea, and it's like you can just always have 2 secret
idea,
agents.
Mr. Stark.
You can always just have 2 secret agents fighting weird sci-fi monsters and like real crime bosses. This, you have to justify the ridiculousness of the premise in a different way.
Yeah.
So I'd still be down for seeing a Mod Squad parody. Actually, I still think that's a good idea. Hell, bring back Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill and do Mod Squad meets 21 Jump Street, But, and just actually, you know what? Now they said that, do that movie and have the same 3 actors come back, but play still like they're 19. Like, make that the joke. But
21 Jump Street really was a lightning in a bottle, hey?
Well,
mind you, 22 is fucking awesome too. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say the lightning did strike twice on that, and I think we were robbed of. I bet you the lightning would have struck 3 times if we could have got MIB 23.
Oh, I know.
I will always regret that didn't happen.
Yeah, one of the greatest ideas ever in Hollywood, and of course they said, never mind. We'll make the Chris Hemsworth movie and then have Chris and Trev talk about it. Yeah. So anyway, the Mod Squad. No.
No.
No. Man, Summer Sweeps is gonna get better, right? Because
do I need to explain the premise of the show to you again?
Well, sometimes we find some gems.
I know.
So,
I know.
But next on Summer Sweeps, we got 3 more to go through the summer. We're looking at Miami Vice from 2006, then Get Smart from 2008. And then Land of the Lost from 2009. I hope to enjoy at least one of those. Maybe ironically, I don't know. We'll see.
Have you never seen Miami Vice, Chris?
I've never seen either. Any of these 3. No.
I've seen Miami Vice, and I won't. This is all I'll say to it: is I promise you, whatever you're going to end up thinking about it, good or bad, it's more interesting than the previous 2 movies we've done.
Yeah. I have a sense. I mean, that's Michael Mann, right? So
yes.
I mean, we're going in with a pretty acclaimed. Master.
I mean, you can even look into the general reaction to Miami Vice, and you'll see that it's a very divisive film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that alone, should get you a little excited, because when a film's divisive, that means ooh, how am I going to come down on it? Whereas, the Avengers and the Mod Squad, everyone hated these movies. We were like, oh, maybe we'll be like the odd man out. We'll be like, why does everyone hate these? These are misunderstood masterpieces. No, it turns out actually the world was right about these.
And back-to-back years too, hey?
Yeah.
Not good at all. Similar time, similar era when they aired. Both start with the.
There had to be someone at somewhere in America, right, where there was these 2 friends, and the one was super excited and telling his friend about the Matrix, and his other friend was like, yeah, but whatever about the Matrix, man. Did you see the Mod Squad earlier this year? And his friend's like, what are you talking about? Shut up about the Mod Squad. No, man, I'm telling you.
I cannot believe how many bangers were in 99. That's incredible. Again, I listed off a lot and I left a lot off. So yeah. Anyway, follow along. at F2FPod. That's at F2, the number 2FPod. That's on all the socials, so like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be great. And then just join the tribe and hit that subscribe and follow along with us among summer sweeps. Yeah, hopefully it gets better. I mean, 2 very atrocious movies in a row. We're due for something.
Hey, you know what? If nothing else, we got The Rock coming up in one of these, baby. So
we really got to keep that to a minimum. He's gonna come for us. I saw a rumor on a subreddit, so it's probably true, that says that he wants to maybe run for vice president. Like he might want to be a running mate.
He will never. My take on The Rock is that he'll never run for office because that would require showing any kind of like stance that might alienate people. So,
all right, getting it out here before that episode. Okay, all right.
Nice work.
Thank you.
So you kids are what? Some kind of mod squad or something?